Well, good afternoon and welcome to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase, our weekly call-in town hall and radio show right after the Christmas break. I hope you guys had a great Christmas. I know I did. I got to spend a lot of time with my family. All my kids were home. It was a great Christmas break. Well, this is a call-in town hall with your state representative. Feel free to call in at any time, 804-454-1366. You can ask your question right here, right now. Again, I'm State Senator Amanda Chase, your weekly radio show host. I serve you at the state level, not to be confused with the federal level, which meets in D.C. And my office is at the state capitol in downtown Richmond. I'm still in my first term in office, which is a 4-year term. And we're going back into session in less than 2 weeks. So I'm actually kind of scared this year. It's pretty crazy out there. I'm really excited about my guest that's coming on today. Congressman Brat is coming on in just a minute. And he's going to give us a brief update about what's going on in D.C. And he's done so many wonderful things for our district. He's actually my congressman. And he's a member of the House Budget Committee, Education and the Workforce Committee, and the Small Business Committee. Did you also know he's the chairman of the Small Business Subcommittee on Economic Growth, Tax, and Capital Access? And one of my favorite things is he's a member of the Freedom Caucus, the true Republicans of Congress. Are you there, Congressman Brat?
Hey, I'm here, Senator. Thanks for having me on.
Well, we're really happy to have you on. I hope you had a great Christmas break with your family. Did you get any time off?
Oh, yeah, I feel like a new man. Christmas is great. I'm looking forward to New Year's and you feel like you're just reborn. It's great.
Thank God. When I talked to you last Thursday, things were a little bit rough, and you weren't even sure if you were going to get to come home for Christmas.
That's right. That's right.
So last time we spoke, I know last week was a big week for you. Why don't you tell everyone about the big couple things that happened last week?
Yeah, so we had to get tax reform through, and it was rushed right to the end. And then the Senate, we were kind of waiting to see if they would have the votes, and then the White House has to be happy with it, and then the House has to be happy with it. And so we got that done, and so that was just a huge relief. And then we had 2 days left. We stayed in an extra week to get tax done, but then we had 2 days left to get the entire federal budget done again. And so we were hoping to get a few more Republican priorities put on there, especially plussing up the military and defense. So we got, Navy ships colliding, and our Air Force folks aren't getting the training they need, et cetera. And so we were trying to plus up defense a little bit to get the basics covered, but the Democrats wouldn't let us do that. And so we just kicked the can again, did what's called a continuing resolution, or a CR, to January 19th. So we got to come back and do it all over again.
Well, and it sounds like the plan passed the House by a 227 to 203 vote. And you had 12 Republicans that joined every Democrat in voting against it. Boy, we want a list of those 12 Republicans so we know whose offices we need to call and tell them. Yeah,
that was pretty much those SALT states, the state and local tax, the New Jersey, New York, California. In the federal tax reform part of it, we got rid of a lot of those deductions. We capped it at $10,000 benefit, and they lose the deductions on the local real estate tax and their state income tax. And so in some of those states, the state income tax is up, at 14%. And so the irony is, right, the part the press will never explain to you about is that's poor states, right, subsidizing the rich states that have high state income tax.
Exactly.
And so and no one ever explains that to the folks. You hear, well, this SALT tax and you're losing deductions, but the rich are losing the deductions, and then the left has been, you're just playing total politics with the tax bill, saying it's, on the backs of the poor. And the truth couldn't be further. A single mom's going to get over $1,000 back. The average Virginia family making about $70,000 with 2 kids is going to get $2,059 back next year, and that'll show up in your paycheck in February. And so just wait till you see it with your own eyes, and then you'll know who's telling you the truth.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's interesting to me how the high tax state taxes are high. They're saying that that's why they wanted to vote against it. It's called lower your state taxes, people.
Right.
Vote for
that's
people
right.
that are not rhinos here, but will actually lower your taxes.
Yep.
So,
yeah, and I'll throw in one other funny one on that, right? So we got a lot of folks leaving the high-tax states, moving out of California, moving out of New York, coming down here, and then some of the same folks who escaped the high-tax states, when they're here, some of them want to raise the taxes here. So it is a strange world.
You know, this is kind of crazy you should say that. So my husband works for a company that was headquartered out of California, in Torrance, California, and they moved to Texas because the taxes were less.
Sure.
So I'm like, if you're going to move to a lower tax state, then maybe you should vote Republican. Vote for your lower taxes.
That would be great.
That's not happening. It's not happening. We've got a lot of people. I mean, we saw in the last election a lot of people moving here, voting for. They like our lower taxes, but when they get here, they continue to vote for those that raise their taxes. Don't do that. Learn from your mistakes. Why do you think you are where you are?
Yep, and the low tax states are the faster growth, pro business, high energy states as well. And so that energy, that it all goes hand in hand when you have that positive can-do spirit.
Now, one of the things that you said that you wished in the final bill that it would have called initially, I think, what was 3 tax brackets instead of 7, but you said there's still good news there.
Yeah, so I mean, we wanted to simplify it even more, and we didn't get enough of the tax reform that we wanted done. But the 7 rates, the Senate actually shocked us and improved the bill in a lot of ways. Usually when you go to conference, it's a scary bad news scenario.
I've been there before.
But the Senate, they solved a lot of the issues. There was a Medicare issue and a graduate school issue and a student interest issue, and they solved a lot of that. And then they also ensured that small business got a better deal than originally we had in the House plan, which we were all fighting for. Ron Johnson was a senator from Wisconsin, really fought hard for small business deduction to be increased. And so we got some good news. And then the 7 rates, it makes it a little bit more complex, but they did work it so that over 80% of Americans are going to get a tax cut. And especially in the middle class, I can tell you everybody's going to get a tax cut.
You know, it's really interesting to me because everybody I know, I think, has seen CBS, and they did that special, and there's 3 different scenarios of individuals who are wondering if they were going to benefit at all, get a tax cut instead of having to pay more. And I just thought it was interesting. CBS, of all the networks, ran this, and all 3 people that they picked with real life examples, whether it was like a family of 4 earning $73,000 a year, they saw their taxes drop by more than $2,000. I mean, every single case CBS came up with, all of them were going to get tax cuts, like every last one of them. But the Democrats are out there saying, this is only going to benefit the rich. I mean, it just blows my mind. I mean, it's so frustrating.
Yeah, I know. Well, people are going to find out, and I mean that I think we got some great news, and it's not just a matter of what you get back, right? Bernie Sanders ran on economic populism because the American people haven't had a wage rate increase in 30 to 40 years, right? And so they know that, right? Obama was in office for 8 years. The Democrats owned the House and the Senate and the White House and didn't do anything pro-growth. And so the proof's in the pudding. We just put in a program that's going to be great, and it's not only how much you get back, but hopefully every college kid or high school kid that graduates in the next few years, they're going to have multiple job offerings. And there's nothing better you could do for a young person, right? If you give them the opportunities to use their God-given gifts, I mean, that's why you're on earth, right? Everybody goes to work every day.
As a mom of 4 teenage kids, 1 in college, 1 in PA school, I am with you 100%.
Right. I mean, that's the best thing a parent can do or a politician can do is help those kids get great jobs. That's what's going to happen.
Well, it's interesting because, whenever we were looking at, how much we looked at the different scenarios, different profiles, different people married with children, homeowners, small business owners. We went down the list to see who would actually benefit. And it was basically, according to an accountant, every one of these families was going to have more money in their pocket next year. But then look at the reaction from the business committee. Look at Wells Fargo. Look at Fifth Third Bank Corporation. I mean, they're talking about raising their minimum wage to like $15 an hour. They're talking about, giving 1,300 plus employees a bonus. At AT&T, they were giving 200,000 employees $1,000 each. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, if you're that person that gets $1,000 and there are 200,000 of them, I think we're going to see this across the economy. Wells Fargo, they're doing similar things. So you're not just going to see the numbers that we're showing you here, but exponentially this is going to grow because it creates economic growth. What we've been talking about forever. If we could just, it's going to cost $1.5 trillion, but we'll come back. We're already going to a break. We'll be back with Congressman Dave Brat. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Cut to the Chase with State Senator Amanda Chase and Congressman Brat. Live with you today. And if you'd like to call in and ask a question, feel free to do so. The number here is 804-454-1366. That's 804-454-1366. And, a lot of people say not much gets done in Washington, but last week I think was a great exception and why we want to send more people like Congressman Brat and the Freedom Caucus to Washington, and we're gradually seeing this culture change, which I love. I love seeing this. We have some real conservatives in there who are looking to actually cut our taxes, and good job, Congressman Brat. So,
hey, thank you.
So before the break, we were talking about the economic stimulus and what's going on with all these businesses like AT&T and Wells Fargo, and the list goes on. What are the other financial indicators that we're looking at here? Like
the most important is we're currently growing at 3%, which never happened on an annual basis for the past 8 years. And then the Fed has us growing at 4% next quarter. And so one of the things the left is saying, I mean, it is interesting, right? The Democrats, they don't have a health care bill ready to go. Obamacare is collapsing. They don't have a tax bill. They don't have a spending bill. And so we're doing all the lifting. It would be good if they had constructive improvements. We're all ears, right? I mean, both sides can come up with good ideas that are pro-growth, and we want to hear them. But so far, we haven't seen that. And so they had a budget they put in, the progressive budget, that raised taxes by $10 trillion. And so that would slow. You'd be in a recession immediately next year. You got the stock market hitting 70 all-time highs. You've got hiring going through the roof. We're going to be competitive with the rest of the world. And, I mean, you could just go on. The most important one for me is the consumer and investment optimism indexes. Those are forward-looking expectations of what people are going to be doing on the business side and consumers going out shopping, and they're all positive and through the roof. And so we have great news. And then the Democrats are just kind of being naysayers. They don't have any positive policy. No example of a policy they can put forward. And they're just kind of denying reality. And so it's kind of an easy case to make right now.
I know one of the things that you mentioned is that we are competitive with the rest of the world. I mean, that is so important and sometimes underestimated, I think, in the arguments. I know a number of my friends who actually do have businesses and they have had to move across to India and other countries. I remember getting a call and I'm like, why aren't you in the U.S.? And he's like, are you kidding me? With the corporate income tax, I can't keep my business there. I'm looking forward to them coming back and bringing the money back to the States because it's been going elsewhere.
Yep, and that will happen. We went from 35 down to 21, and we're not done, right? I mean, that's the first move.
And that takes place this year, not next year.
Yeah, just right. And then I just to give folks an idea, Ireland is at 13%. So they're way lower than our new 21 rate, and they're thinking about going down to 8%.
Good.
So the rest of the world gets it, right? You've got to be competitive, and just like the state competition, right? If you're not competitive, people are going to leave your state with high human capital folks, highly educated folks who we want to get here.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And, I'm seeing that at a personal level. My daughter is actually moving to South Carolina at the end of the month. And, as a Virginia legislator, I'd like to keep my family members here in Virginia, but that's another story.
Yep.
We have to do more to keep the jobs here. And every day you hear of people in your neighborhood, they're moving to another state, they're moving somewhere else. We need to stop that. I know that during the gubernatorial races, Ed Gillespie was talking about the number of people for the first time ever. There's more people leaving Virginia than are coming to Virginia. So it's
Yeah, well, and I always try to remind folks who aren't political. There's a lot of our neighbors they watch politics a little bit, they vote, but they move to Henrico and Chesterfield, et cetera. Where we're positive. We got great transportation. We got great schools. We got great pro-business community. And the Republicans have worked very hard to have that pro-growth dynamism here. And so now we'll see, right? The General Assembly is going to get very competitive. And so thank goodness you're a leader there on education and all these vocational and technical skills that we need developed for the workforce out there. And I hope our Democrat friends will join us in some of that, because it's just utterly key for the future of our region, right? If we get into some anti-business kind of thing, we've got people running for Congress and state Senate and delegates that are saying tax cuts are bad, business is bad, it's all, the middle class is good, the government's good, business is bad. I don't know how you sustain a society with that philosophy. I really do not.
Well, it's very interesting because I remember you and I went to a groundbreaking ceremony for a local church. I don't know if you remember this particular lady that came up to us, and
Absolutely.
we were talking. She had asked us the question. She said, with the corporate rate you guys are talking about, because I had in a bill last year in Virginia that would take our state corporate income tax from 6% to 2.5% to be competitive even with North Carolina. And she was saying, well, most companies are going to be stingy, and they're, how do you know that they're going to reinvest in their people? I mean, don't most of them reinvest back in their business? And I was like, well, I think some of that happens, but we can see that at the federal level, what these businesses are doing, they are reinvesting in their people. You do want them to reinvest in their infrastructure, and you want them to grow as a company, because what are they going to do? They're going to hire. They're going to continue to grow and hire. So I think it's a good thing. Now let's go back to Obamacare. Now, Obamacare has not been repealed, but let's talk about some of the changes that this bill does make to Obamacare. Like, for instance, the tax plan ends the fines for people who don't carry health insurance. So that's a pretty major change, because I don't think that's a good idea to force people to buy insurance, especially health insurance. I mean, they should be able to do that or not. But let's talk about some of the things that stay the same. Like Medicaid expansions is still going to serve low-income adults. Pre-existing conditions are still in there.
Right.
Income-based subsidies for consumers buying individual health insurance policies. We keep hearing about those are gone, but no, they're not. They're still there. And we still have Optima. We still have Anthem in Virginia. We went through this continuing saga back in June of them leaving and then coming back. So we've got them back, but the premiums are like 60% higher.
Right.
We talked about the requirement that insurers cover essential health benefits. And the unfortunate thing is that the mandates that the larger employers provide coverage to their workers, or they still have to face those fines. And I was talking to another friend of mine who's actually has a grocery store in Henrico, was talking about they actually had to restructure their store and make it so that they only had less than 29 full-time employees. Otherwise, they would enter in another category where they're going to have to pay more in insurance and everything else. So I think it's important with some of these other smaller businesses that we take a look at that so that they don't faced those fines. But it doesn't repeal the fines for uninsured individuals until the start of 2019. Is that right?
18, I think. Have everybody check.
We'll check on that.
I could be wrong on that, but yeah, check on that one. But you're right. Obamacare is still in full force, right? And the easiest way to see what that means is a young person cannot go out and buy a cheap health insurance policy. And why is that? Because they have to buy these silver or gold or platinum right, premiums that are written by the insurance company that have to meet all of these Title I, Title IX, pre-existing conditions, everything under the roof, right? So you're buying a gold-plated product, but no one can use them because you can't pay for the deductible. And so in Charlottesville now, it's up to $39,000. It's the highest in the country, $39,000 for a family of four before you get $1 of insurance back. And so, the average family income is about $60,000 or $70,000 for a family of four. And so how do you pay $39,000 just for health, right? Then you got to have a house, food, everything else.
That's exactly right. And we're getting ready to go to a break, but when we come back, Jerry from Chesterfield has a question for Congressman Brat and I. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Well, you've joined us again. 804-454-1366 is the number to call in. And we have Jerry from Chesterfield on the line.
Hello, Senator Chase and Congressman Brat. How are you doing?
Great, Jerry. How are you?
Doing great. Have a question that you may have discussed this already, and if you have, this will be two parts, so you can go to the part that you haven't discussed. But I know a sticking point for the Freedom Caucus before, I think it was September, they decided to endorse the Republican plan or the version that finally made it for this tax reform bill, was that they didn't want there to be a increase in the deficit. And that was, something that, was a principled issue and they didn't really want to go with. But in the end, some compromise was met and that made it through. There is going to be an increase in the deficit, but the rest of the plan looks really good. I'm wondering what the argument was that allowed our fellow conservatives to get past that issue, and maybe it's that it's going to come down eventually. But also, the second part is that in Washington, I know there's a lot of pressure to compromise, but also things don't get done without compromise, and sometimes that is a necessary thing. And I was curious about Congressman Brat's perspective on that after being in Congress for a couple of years.
All right.
Yeah. Hey, great questions, both of them. Sorry, I meant to get to the deficit piece, and I went off on one of my professor tangents on you earlier, I think. But on the deficit, that's a huge concern. But even early on, that didn't concern me as much. And so you'll see the Democrat talking points. That's one of the biggies, right? And they'll always couch it. Right. They'll say these University of Chicago economics professors say that the bill will not pay for itself. That is true. The narrow text of the tax cut bill won't probably pay for itself right out of the gate. But that's not the relevant question for me in terms of paying for deficits. What matters is, will the President Trump's agenda, along with the Congress, pay for it, right? Will the economy pay for it? That's the real world that people care about. Right. And so if you're growing at 3%, you're already paying for it, right? That brings in another $1 trillion a year. And so all we have to come up with is $150 billion a year to pay for the tax cut. So the narrow bill itself may not. The technical analysis said it paid for about a third. And then the policy versus current law paid for about a third. And then you got a third left you'd have to deal with. That's just the bill itself. So you're only off by $500 billion. But if you're growing at 3%, you're blowing it away, right? You can easily pay for it. And then on the compromise, I hear you. And so we work as best we can. And this year we've had pretty good results. We agreed as a conference on the Freedom Caucus that on the tax bill, et cetera, we wanted to get 218 votes and pass this legislation with only Republican votes. And that if we held together as a team, we wanted to compromise that way. The compromise we didn't like before was where our leadership team in the past with Boehner, et cetera, would go off and get Democrats to vote for big spending packages. And so the Republicans would plus up the military, the Democrats would plus up the social side, and we're still running deficits nearing, and next year maybe $1 trillion a year. And so if you keep compromising and you keep getting $1 trillion a year deficit, something's got to give. And so I don't know whether I've given you. It's not really a clean answer, but we're compromising as best we can to keep the Republican conference together, because it's clear we work way harder at balancing the budget. The Progressive Caucus passed their budget this year, and it raised spending $11 trillion, increased taxes by $10 trillion, and ends up with more debt and deficits than when we cut taxes. And yet the mainstream media will never cover that. So it's very hard to make progress when the other side starts out wanting, just dramatic, huge increases in spending across the board. And so I hope that gives you a little flavor of what we're dealing with.
It does. Great answer. Thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah,
keep up the good work.
Thanks for calling in, Jerry. That was Jerry from Chesterfield. And if you'd like to call in, the number here is 804-454-1366. We don't take a break around here, do we, Congressman Brat?
That's good working.
We work this week, too. I came into the studio today just for this show. It's whenever you say you're going to have a weekly town hall every week, we like to be there every week live. And I'm hoping that we're able to do this during session. It's going to be interesting. We're talking right now of possibly going to Friday after the Lee brothers, beginning during session, just so I can continue to provide this so you all know what's going on, and hopefully we can get Congressman Brat on again during session as well.
Absolutely.
But
Love it.
So what are you looking forward to for the new year?
Legislatively or personally? I'm looking forward personally to warm weather right now.
You and me both.
That's my weak sense of humor. On the legislative side, it looks like we're going to be trying to tackle welfare reform for able-bodied workers. Right, Maine, the state of Maine, put a welfare reform in and clipped their rolls by over half. Just an amazing outcome. And what people don't get about it, they think, the standard Democratic, you're cutting people off from what they need. What it did was it got people back in the workforce, making more income, using their God-given gifts and abilities, and giving them purpose in life. And so that's our goal, right? The goal isn't to clip people's wings. It's to give them full wings so they can fly. And so we got that coming. We're going to look at entitlement reform, because Medicare and Social Security are bankrupt in 2034, and the kids won't get it unless we get our act together on those. And then health care is still, Obamacare is still sitting there in full form, and the premiums are going through the roof. So we're going to have to do something. And that may take a bipartisan compromise. But it's unsustainable totally in its current form. And some people, are cynical, think it was by design, right? So that you'd get to a single payer government program. But you look at how all the other government programs are doing right now, and they're all bankrupt. So I don't think that's a model Republicans want to follow.
Yeah, definitely not. Well, listen, Congressman Brat, I really appreciate you coming on such short notice. Always good to have you on the show. Hope you have a good rest of your break, and Happy New Year.
We will. Happy New Year to you and all your listeners. God bless you all. Thank you.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase, and this is your weekly call-in town hall and radio show. The number, and you can actually call in today, it's 804-454-1366. I'll repeat it again, 804-454-1366. And I really appreciate Congressman Brat coming on and giving us an update. Had a busy, productive week last week, passing tax reform and the stopgap bill to get us through January the 19th. And I will look forward to having him back on the show and giving us an update, hopefully next month. So let's just give a little summary here. We talked about a number of things while he's on the phone, and I like to kind of summarize a little bit about this tax reform and cut to the chase, if you will. And how will this affect you? Starting in February, most of you, in fact, 80% of you, are going to get your paycheck back. And guess what? You're going to have more of your actual paycheck. What a wonderful thing. A single woman with a child gets over $1,000 back. A family of 4 with 2 kids married and making $70,000, which is the typical income in kind of our area here, they're going to get money back, about $2,000 back. The corporate rate goes down from 35% to 21%. That's a win right there, because we're hopefully going to be bringing our companies back. They set up all these satellite companies and headquarters outside of the United States, and I'm hoping that we see more of those corporations come back. I'm going to be making phone calls to some of my friends and see what they're doing. But what I like is that in the Senate plan, they were going to lag that a year so that you didn't see that in your paycheck for a year. But in conference, they fixed that, which is probably the most important piece. So you're going to actually start seeing that this February, which I'm really happy about. Look at the stock market. What's been happening to the stock market? The S&P 500. It's going up, right? In anticipation of this bill getting passed. And it's just incredible to see our economy picking up. Another thing that Congressman Brat says is a big group of winners are the young people looking for work. And, businesses are going to be in a better position to hire people looking for jobs. And, so that's all really good news. And, there's been a lot of confusion because, you hear about the House bill, the Senate bill, and we're talking about the U.S. here, the U.S. House, the U.S. Senate. And then there have been some changes. So I just want to clarify here to make sure everybody's on the same page. Let's talk about what changes does this bill that was just passed make to Obamacare. The most important one here is that the tax plan is going to end fines for people who don't carry health insurance. And that's a major change, but far from the dismantling of the law. And what stays the same, as we said, Medicaid expansion serving low-income adults. It's going to protect that shield people with pre-existing medical conditions from being denied coverage or charged higher premiums. Income-based subsidies for consumers buying individual health insurance policies that require that insurers cover essential health benefits. And then finally, the mandate that larger employees provide coverage to their workers or face fines. That's still in place. It doesn't repeal fines for uninsured individuals until the start of 2019, meaning that the individual mandate is still in force for next year unless the administration acts to waive the penalties. We actually have CW from Midlothian who is asking a question about what the General Assembly is doing about more Sharia laws. Do you want to, CW, are you there?
I'm here.
Great. Thanks for calling in.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, my concern is I think we've seen Sharia law sort of surreptitiously creeping into different state legislatures. We all certainly know about what's going on in Dearborn, Michigan, and areas where there's a high Muslim population. So my concern is has there been any discussion about how to inoculate Virginia, such as changing the Virginia Constitution to simply say that there will be no other law but the U.S. Constitution, and so that we don't, down the road, I know it's not on the forefront right now, but I am concerned that later on, particularly with our new governor and the General Assembly kind of hanging by a thread. I don't know what could happen, but I'm sure right-thinking people, need to address this. And I'm just wondering if there's anything afoot on it.
Sure. That's a really good question. And actually, it's a concern of mine as well. And I was actually reading before the show today about, I think it's England. And now I'm just shooting off the cuff here from my memory, which is a scary thing right now. But they were talking about this very thing happening in England, and how a lot of the mayors basically you saw people running for office that believe that Sharia should be the law of the land. Basically, and like I said, don't quote me on this. I'm remembering this off the top of my head, but basically they basically came in and from the inside out prevented any type of how would you say this? Obstruction. I know what you're saying with this, and I'm trying to think of the right way to word this. But basically, from the inside out, they basically took over the country. So there was not resistance to Sharia law, and so I understand. I know Senator Dick Black is the expert in the General Assembly and in the Senate on this, and that would be a good question that we can ask him. And something I will definitely take back to my colleagues and express that is a concern. I've got almost 50 pieces of legislation that are in the draft form right now. That is not one of the pieces that I personally have. We will see over the next week what legislation our colleagues have filed. We're still waiting. Some of our bills are still being drafted, even though we're starting in less than 2 weeks. And we're also still waiting. The House is still divided right now. We're not sure which pieces of legislation we're actually going to file. So I don't know the answer to your question right now as far as other legislators, but I will certainly be on the lookout for that. And
could I, if I could mention one more thing? I was listening to AFR radio several days ago, and I heard just the most erudite speaker on this subject I think that I've ever heard anywhere, radio or TV. Her name is Melanie Phillips, and she is a conservative commentator on one of the UK papers, but she laid out the whole premise of what's going on in Europe, and even to the point that by 2030 we won't recognize Europe. It all has to do with birth rates. Mm-hmm. It all has to do with this incremental way of getting Sharia law just sort of shoved under the door. Next thing you know, you got a Sharia law affecting someone at the community level, and then pretty soon it's all the way up to the state level.
CW, it is a real concern. We're going to have to go to a break here, but I'm going to make some notes here and follow up. But thank you for calling in today.
MelaniePhillips.com. People should go to her site. Thank you.
All right, we'll take a look. Thanks for calling in. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Lately, I've been losing sleep, dreaming about the things.
Welcome back to the final segment of Cut to the Chase with State Senator Amanda Chase here in the studio. And we've talked about a lot of things today, and I do appreciate those of you who called in today. Stay tuned. We will come back next Thursday with another segment of Cut to the Chase. We're going to continue right up to session beginning. And at that point, once we still have a House divided, as I was saying earlier. And let me explain what that means to maybe some of you who may not know what I mean by that. For many years, we've had 66 members in the House. So we've had almost a super majority in the House, and they've enjoyed that for a long time. But after Tuesday's election, back in November, the first Tuesday in November, something major happened there, and the Republicans lost a number of seats. In fact, 15. And there's still the outcome of the 94th district is still not resolved. And if you remember last week, I told you on Wednesday of this past week, they were supposed to have a random drawing. However, that was put off into the indefinite future now that Simmons, who's the Democrat, is filing suit. She appeared to have won the seat by a single vote until a 3-judge panel awarded a questionable ballot to Yancey. And I've actually seen a copy of it. It's kind of interesting to look at. And you can see where they basically checked off a vote for all the Republicans, Gillespie, Jill Vogel, John Adams. And then you get to the House of Delegates, and it looks like they got a little bit confused, but eventually they marked through Simmons and checked the one for Yancey. That's the one that was in question. Now, if you had to look at intent, the judges are saying, it looks like that single vote looks like it should be a Republican vote, which would mean that we would basically keep the House majority, and I hope that's the way that it goes. But we won't know, because now a federal court is going to hear the lawsuit over the 28th district on January the 5th. Yeah, just 5 days before before the General Assembly convenes. So, nobody needs to watch soap operas anymore. Just watch the General Assembly, because there's always something that's coming up. Just when you think things are going to go one way, they go a different direction. So those of you who are praying, please pray for next Friday, because that's a big date. We want to keep the majority in the House. We have a slight majority in the Senate, like 21-19, so not a lot of room for error there. And now we're looking at the possibility of a House divided, or hopefully, it's going to be crazy if they have to split the power, a 50-50 split in the 100-seat House of Delegates. That would be interesting. And they're talking about election in the 28th district. If Democratic Josh Cole were to win that would not be good. Anyway, stay tuned. There's always new news next Thursday. Stay tuned to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase.